The Life and Acts of St. Patrick by Jocelin. Chapter 151. The wicked man Machaldus and his companions are converted unto the faith. And in Ulidia was Magill, a heathen, who was also called Machaldus, and he was eminent in wickedness and notorious in cruelty, and forasmuch as like always accordeth with like, he gathered unto himself no small company, well practised in theft, in rapine, and in blood. And this man placed on his own head and on his companions certain diabolical signs which are called departeth, that all might behold how devoted was the brotherhood unto the service of Satan. And it happened on a time that the blessed Patrick was journeying with his people through the place where lurked this band of evil doers, waiting and watching for any traveller on whom they might rush forth to destroy and to despoil. And beholding the saint, they thought at first to slay him as the seducer of their souls and the destroyer of the gods, but suddenly their purpose being changed by the divine will, they thought it shame to shed the blood of a peaceful, weak, and unarmed old man, yet counselling to prove or rather to mock the power of Christ, and the holiness of Patrick, they placed one of the companions named Garbinus on a couch, and though he was in perfect health they feigned him as dead, and they covered him with a cloak, and with deriding prayers they besought the man of God that he would provide the funeral rites, or, as he was wont, restore unto life the dead man. But the saint, at the revelation of the Spirit, understood what they had done, and pronounced that these scorners had deceivingly, yet not falsely, declared of the companion's death. Therefore disregarding their entreaties he prayed unto God for the soul of the derider, and went on his way. And the saint had not journeyed far, when they uncovered the cloak from the companion, and lo! They found him not feignedly but really dead. And they, affrighted at this fearful chance, and dreading lest the same should happen unto themselves, followed the saint, and fell at his feet, and acknowledged their offence, and by the contrition obtained pardon. And they all believed in the Lord, and in his name were they baptized. Then did the saint, at their humble entreaty, revive the dead man, and washing him in the holy font, associated him unto them in the faith of Christ. Chapter 152. The Penitence of Machaldus. And Machaldus the chief falling at St. Patrick's feet, confessed his sins and entreated with many tears that a life of penitence might be appointed unto him, whereby he might attain the life of eternity. And the saint, inspired of heaven, enjoined him that he should utterly renounce his native soil and give all his substance to the poor, and he clothed Machaldus in a vile and rough garment, and chained him with chains of iron, and cast the key thereof into the ocean. Likewise he commanded him to enter, alone, without oars, into a boat made only of hides, and that on whatsoever country he should land under the guidance of the Lord there should he serve him even unto the end of his days. And the man, truly repenting, did as his pastor enjoined, for he, alone, chained with iron chains, bearing on his head the tonsure as the token of penitence, entered the boat, and under the protection of God he committed himself unto the waves, and was borne by them unto the island Eubonia, which is called Mania. And therein were two bishops, named Conidrius and Romulus, whom St. Patrick himself had consecrated and appointed to rule over the people of that island and to instruct them in the faith of Christ after the death of Germanus the first bishop. And they, beholding Machaldus, marvelled much, and they pitied his misery, and when they understood the cause, received him kindly and retained him with themselves. And after he had for some space there abided, a fish was one day taken in the sea and brought unto the dwelling, and when the fish was opened before them, a key was found in its belly, and Machaldus being released from his chains, gave thanks unto God, and went thenceforth free. And he, increasing in holiness, after the deaths of these holy bishops attained the episcopal degree, and being eminent in his miracles and in his virtues, there did he rest. And in that island was a city after him named of no small extent, the remains of whose walls may yet be seen. And in the cemetery of its church is a sarcophagus of hollowed stone, whereout a spring continually exudeth, nay, sufficiently floweth forth, the which is sweet to the draught, wholesome to the taste, and healeth divers infirmities, but chiefly the stings of serpents and the deadliness of poison, for whoso drinketh thereof, either receiveth instant health, or instantly he dieth. And in that stone are the bones of St. Machaldus said to rest, yet therein is nothing found, save only clear water. And though many have oftentimes endeavoured to remove the stone, and especially the king of the Nerici, who subdued the island, that he might at all times have sweet water, yet have they all failed in their attempt, for the deeper they have digged to raise up the stone, so much the more deeply and firmly did they find it fixed in the heart of the earth. Chapter 153. A meadow is overflowed by the sea. At another time the blessed Patrick, being fatigued with travel, turned aside for the sake of a little rest, and for pasturing his horses, into a grassy meadow near Roscomira in Connickshire. But when he had sate down and his horses had begun to feed, a certain wicked and perverse plebeian, the owner of the place, rushed forward in the fury of anger to expel him forth. And first he attacked the saint with reproachful words, and at length he cast stones at the horses and drove them from the field, wherefore the hurt done unto them increased the injury and the affront offered unto their master. And as Saint Patrick was one, and chief among those horses, with which according to the prophet Habakkuk the Lord made his way in the sea, therefore was the Lord wroth at an injury offered unto him, and therefore at his command the meadow withered up, and the sea flowing forward covered it, and it remained unfruitful for ever. Fitting and just was this judgment of God, that the people which hated him, and refused his servant one blade of grass, should lose the whole harvest, and that as this man despitefully entreated Saint Patrick, and drove him from his field, he should thenceforward lose the place for which so contentiously he had striven. Chapter 154. A stone is changed into milk, and milk is changed into stones. And one who had long time been a servant unto many evil doers, hearing of the virtues and the miracles of Saint Patrick, came unto him, for the purpose of contending with him in working signs. And many false signs did he multiply, the which the saint, having prayed and made the sign of the cross, dispersed. Then the magician, seeing all his inventions to be frustrated, required of Patrick that he should work signs to evince the power of his God, and the saint delayed not to do what might prove the virtue of Christ, and instruct in the faith many Christians, for he changed an hard stone into a soft mass of curdled milk, and of this milk, in the name of Christ, he changed 2 soft pieces into hard stones. But lest these should be accounted false and like unto the signs of the magicians, the stones continued in the same hardness whereunto they were transformed. But this which was corporally done before the eyes of men, doth the divine virtue spiritually do in the conversion of believers, inasmuch as the worshippers of stones, men of hardened hearts, become soft unto the faith and love of Christ, and as if again born infants, they desire the milk of the apostolic doctrine, that thereby they may grow up unto salvation. So did it happen unto the magician, who beholding this miracle believed in the Lord and was baptized. Chapter 155. A wagon laden with twigs is saved from the fire. And Saint Patrick requested of a certain man, that he would bring unto him 2 wagons laden with twigs, for that such were required for certain needful uses. And the man fulfilled his request, and brought the twigs unto the appointed place. But a fire seized the 2 wagons and burned one thereof, yet left it the other unharmed of the flame. And all the beholders marveled, that the fire should exercise its natural power over the one wagon, and on the other have no effect, as of yore it happened unto the 3 children which were cast into the fiery furnace, but which were saved from the fire, nor did any hurt come on them. We however admire in this miracle the merit of the saint, but in no wise think that the cause thereof needs to be discussed. Chapter 156. The saint is preserved untouched from the falling rain. The man of God was wont to observe with singular devotion the Lord's Day, for the remembrance of that great solemnity, which the life of death reviving unto resurrection, hath made worthy of rejoicing in heaven, in earth, and in the grave. Wherefore this holy custom was fixed in his mind, even as a law, that wheresoever the Sabbath eve arrived, he for reverence thereto passed the night and the next holy day in hymns, and in psalms, and in spiritual songs, and heartily devoting himself unto divine contemplation, so he continued until the morning of the succeeding day. And on a time the observance of this holy custom caused the blessed Patrick to celebrate the vigil under the open air, and a violent fall of rain inundated all the field around, but the place whereon the holy watchman, the guardian of the walls of Jerusalem, stood with his companions, was not wetted even with the dropping of one drop thereof. Thus was in Patrick repeated the miracle, which formerly appeared in the fleece of Gideon, when the whole ground was wet with dew, and the fleece was found dry and undamped. Chapter 157. The fingers of Saint Patrick shine with light. But the brightness of the eternal light, that he might prove with how radiant a light of his grace the inward vessel of his saint was illumined, glorified him by another miracle of yet higher marvel. For on the same night which Patrick had passed under the open air, lauding and praising God, the field wherein he stood was covered with thickest darkness. And the chariot driver of the holy prelate long time sought for the steeds which he had loosed unto pasture, that he might reyoke them to the chariot, but when for the darkness he could not find them, he wailed with much lamentation. Which the Saint compassionating, drew forth his right hand from his sleeve, and raised up his fingers. Wonderful was the event, and unheard of through ages. Immediately his fingers shone even as sunbeams, and wonderfully illumining the whole country, turned darkness into light, and night into day. Then by the aid of this radiant miracle the chariot driver found his steeds, and led them rejoicing to the Father, and yoked them unto the chariot. And he, the bearer and the preacher of the heavenly light, his fingers ceasing to shine, yet ceasing not to pour forth the purest and freshest myrrh, ascended the chariot on the morning of the succeeding day, as was his custom, and hastened on, whithersoever he was called by the will of him, who directed him, and dwelled in him. Thus by a very beautiful but sufficiently convincing miracle his fingers outwardly shone, so working in them the finger of the God, who so frequently had healed and saved and protected by his works of light. Chapter 158. Fire is also seen to issue from his mouth. And he preached the word of God unto a certain great man, to whom it seemed that fire issuing from the mouth of the saint entered into his ears and mouth, and filled him internally with its heat. And this fire was not consuming, but illumining, not burning, but shining, as he who so experienced related unto the saint, saying, I behold a flaming fire to issue from thy mouth, and penetrate my body and my inmost heart. Then to him the saint, Our God is the true light illumining every man at his entrance into the world, our God, who came to send upon earth that fire which he desireth should burn in the hearts of the faithful, for the word of the Lord is bright, and his speech is as fire, whereof by my preaching hast thou had in thyself the proof. Chapter 159. The Holy Virgin Memhessa departeth unto God. There was a noble and beautiful damsel, named Memhessa, the daughter of a prince who reigned in a certain part of Britain. And she, being occupied with the grace of the Holy Spirit, through the virtue which is innate in a good disposition, and from the divers species of all created creatures, understood the Creator, and him, being so understood, she affected with all her heart and with all her soul, for the love and desire of the which affection she looked down on all the riches, and all the delights, and all the splendors, and all the charms of this world's glory, and she despised them in her heart. Yet had she not been washed in the holy font, though in her manners she represented the purity of the Christian faith. And her parents being heathens, mainly endeavored with words and with stripes to frustrate and to shake her purpose, but the column of her virgin heart being builded on the rock of Christ, could neither be subverted by the persuasions, nor shaken by the threats, nor could she by any their evil doings at all be moved from her fixed firmness. And forasmuch as the springtime of her youth made her beautiful, and the elegance of her form made her right lovely, while in her countenance the lilies and the roses of the garden were mingled together, very many princes of royal stock desired her in marriage, however in no wise could she thereunto be persuaded or compelled. Wherefore having a long time vainly laboured, her parents by general consent brought her unto Saint Patrick, the fame of whose holiness was proved and published through all that country by many signs and miracles. Then they unfolded unto the saint the purpose of the damsel, earnestly entreating him that he would bring her unto the sight of his God whom she so loved and toward whom her heart yearned. This the saint hearing, rejoiced in the Lord, giving thanks unto him, whose breath doth blow even whither and how he listeth, and who oftentimes calleth unto himself without any preaching those whom he had predestinated unto life. Then, having expounded to the damsel the rules of the Christian faith, he catechized her, and baptized her confessing her belief, and strengthened her with the sacraments of the body and blood of Christ. And she, having received the viaticum, fell to the ground in the midst of her prayers and breathed forth her spirit, thus ascending from the font spotless and washed of all sin, and being led by the angels unto the sight of her fair and beautiful beloved, went she into his embraces. Then did Patrick, and all who were present, glorify God, and with honourable sepulture they committed her holy remains unto the earth. Chapter 160. Of the work which was done in the Lord's day. And at a certain time Saint Patrick on the Lord's day entered a harbour on the northern coast of Hibernia, opposite the town of Drumbo, yet would he not go forth of the ship, but remaining therein he solemnized the day with his wonted devotion. And now was the mid-hour of the day past, when he heard no little noise, whereby he understood that the heathens were violating the Sabbath with the profane labours, the which was right contrary to his custom and command, and that they were then employed in a certain work which is called rathe, that is, a wall. And thereat being somewhat moved, he ordered that they should be bidden before him, and imperatively commanded them on that day to surcease from their labor. But this profane and foolish generation received the prohibition of the saint not only with contempt, but with scorn and laughter. Then did he, understanding the perverseness of those scorners, repeat his prohibition, and thus did he say unto them, Though mightily shall ye labor unto your purpose, never shall it come to any effect, nor ever shall ye derive any profit therefrom. And how true were his words, the event showed, for on the next night was the sea wondrously raised with a tempest, and spreading thereover scattered all the work of the heathens, and lest ever it should be recollected or rebuilded, dispersed it with irreparable dispersion.